Investment advisory services offered through Alpha Capital Management, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisor. Alpha Capital Management, LLC, and SWAN-Capital are independent entities.
What your money would say. Andrew McNair. Money Talks. Are you listening? Money Talks. Are you listening? Money Talks. Are you listening? What your money would say with Andrew McNair.
We're live here on What Your Money Would Say. I'm your host, Andrew McNair. And for the next 30 minutes, every Saturday from 12:30 to 1 o'clock here on WCOA 1370, I will be your retirement resource. Now, on What Your Money Would Say, we'd like to take financial chickens and make them financial swans, because we believe in what SWAN stands for: sleep well at night. And as a retiree, you've worked your entire life to get to this point. You've probably invested in your 401k, put 3 kids through college, and even gave a little bit to charity when you had a little bit extra. But it's time for you to enjoy your golden years. It's time for you to retire well. And we're going to talk about a very serious topic today. And don't forget, though, if you have any questions about our topic today, or just any questions about retirement planning in general, our phone line here at the radio show is 478-3116. That's 478-3116. And we'll be happy to take your question live. Now, before we dive deep into our topic today, I want to talk to you about a local event we have coming up here at SWAN-Capital. And that is our Social Security Class 101 at the University of West Florida. It's coming up very quickly. It's October 8th and October 10th. And it's going to go on from 6 to 7. So not very long-winded. I usually don't talk too long. As you know, I'm pretty short and to the point. So the tuition's about $35, and we're going to dive into some really deep questions that, as a retiree, you need to understand fully. Like, when it comes to Social Security, do you take it at 62, 66, or 70? See, there's a lot of opinions out there. Do you take it early because you don't know if Social Security is going to be there for you? Or do you wait till 70? Or how can you afford to wait till 70? And then we're also going to talk about how do you maximize benefits. If this Social Security is going to be one of your only income sources in retirement, we got to squeeze out every dollar from the Social Security Administration that we can. And then lastly, is Social Security going to even be there for me? Because with the government shutdowns that are looming as we speak, who's going to actually pay that check? So we're going to talk about that October 8th, October 10th at UWF, the Social Security Class 101. If you want to be RSVP'd for that event, sign up either at UWF or at SWAN-Capital.com. That's SWAN, like the bird, -capital.com. And while you're on our website, sign up for our weekly market update so you can stay abreast of what's going on in the market. And like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Now, the topic that we're going to talk about today is a very serious one, and it's not a light conversation starter with a loved one. And we're talking about divorce today. Now, divorce has a lot of morbid connotations to it, but we don't try to dodge too many punches here on What Your Money Would Say. We like to jump into the topics so that when you get to this point in life, that you're there and you're ready for it. Because divorce is an emotional process. If you've spoken to anyone that's ever went through it, they'll tell you it's emotional and it's heart-wrenching, especially for not only the people involved, but the family, the kids. So you don't want financial problems to compound that. So here are the stats. They're very staggering. Nearly 50% of all divorces end in divorce. So when you're walking down the aisle, this shouldn't be what you're thinking about, but it's basically like flipping a coin. Is it going to end right? Is it going to be the happily ever after? If not, we got to prepare ourselves. I always say the only person you can control in this world is yourself, and that's a full-time job. So when you throw another person in the mix, it's a big question mark. And this is staggering too. The second marriage, it's over 60%. And if you're on your third or your serial marriage, at third marriage, it's about 70%. So you got to be prepared if you're going into the next marriage, that you're prepared financially, so you again don't have that financial burden going out of it. And sometimes divorce is a necessary decision. Many families say, oh, how come you would do that? That's a terrible thing. But sometimes, as we've talked about, it's outside of your control. It really is. The families I work with are all over age 55 or 5 years from retirement. So a lot of times when I meet with them, this is their second marriage, or they've been newly widowed, and they've never handled finances in their life. That was their other spouses, and they handled, the daily activities, but someone else handled the finances. And so I'm speaking to two groups out there. A family that's either, a spouse that's never taken care of the finances and let the other spouse do it, or the spouse that's always taking care of the finances, but is worried if they passed early or if they got divorced, would that person be okay? And on What Your Money Would Say today, we're going to talk about the top 4 things that you can prepare yourself as a spouse to be prepared financially. And then after that, we're going to bring on Stephen T. Holman, which is a family law attorney. And he has experience. He's actually been divorced before, so he knows what divorcees are going through. So he's a real good subject expert on this topic. So we'll bring him on in just a few minutes. But I want to go over the 4 things to be prepared financially, either for divorce or if you're going through hospice and you expect to be a widow soon. Number 1 is you have to take inventory. You don't know where the finish line is unless you know where you're starting. And the same goes financially. You got to know where you are. What do you own? Taking an inventory of seeing every line item. We know that we have a checking account, but we need to know what savings accounts, what stocks, insurances that we have. And that's important. You want to make sure that's well documented and well listed out for you and your spouse. Also, where are they held? Many times I find that families have the big junk drawer. They have a statement from this bank, a statement from this brokerage house, a statement from this bank. They may have 5 different banks, and this also may be a good exercise of telling you that you may need to consolidate some accounts. And then lastly, whose name is on the account? As Stephen T. Holman, our family law attorney expert that we're bringing on, he's going to talk to you about commingling accounts and how important that is when it comes to divorce proceedings. That commingling of accounts can be a very bad thing. And so we're going to talk about that. So you want to know who's it titled to. The next thing is you want to get educated. We send out a weekly newsletter at SWAN-Capital because we believe in education. And if you want to get signed up for that weekly newsletter, sign up at SWAN-Capital.com. Also, we do a quarterly white paper on a topic where we dig deep into to make sure that you fully understand the bond crisis that may be looming. Also, we have workshops. Like I told you, we have a Social Security workshop that's fast approaching October 8th and October 10th. And then also, you don't want to miss my upcoming book that I'm writing right now, but you also want to pick up the past copies of Don't Be Penny Wise and Dollar Foolish that's on Amazon. So the first one is take an inventory. The second is get educated. And we have plenty of avenues where you can get educated at SWAN-Capital. The third is share responsibilities. A lot of families not only, identify cost savings at the household and what, saving on car insurance, but they also, pay the bills, they manage the investments. Maybe it's time for that you give one of those items to your spouse so they can handle it, so they can put a foot into the financial situation of the household and start getting used to making those decisions. And the fourth is hire someone. Investing in financial planning in general is not a backyard project. It's not a DIY project that you can do it yourself. It's all back to how much is it worth? A lot of times if you skimp on planning, it can cost you in the long run. So just like doing a deck by yourself, you could probably handle that. But building a house, you need someone that has experience. You need a financial architect that makes sure that when you pass away or if you get divorced, that your other spouse will be able to handle her situation or his situation better when y'all split. Now, I am ready to bring on Stephen T. Holman, who's our subject expert on divorce. And I've been looking forward to, having a conversation with him to make sure that if you're going into a divorce or thinking about even just getting married and you don't want to know, you want to know what that divorce process looks like. Well, let's bring on someone that knows all about it. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Stephen, we're speaking to two groups out there. We're speaking to a group that's never been married before, and then we're speaking to a group that's, separated or going through the divorce process, and we want to make sure that both families are as prepared as possible. So if you're speaking to families that are about to get started, they're maybe engaged, maybe dating someone very serious, and they want to make sure that they're protected financially from divorce, what are some tips do you think that would be valuable for them to know?
Well, young couples or first-time at any age getting married, they need to be aware of certain financial matters that may arise during the marriage. For example, if you inherit money during the marriage, if you put that money that you inherit from your family or whoever into a joint account with your spouse, that money becomes half of your spouse's. So if you inherit $100,000 from your father and you put it into a joint account with your spouse, and a week later your spouse says, I want a divorce, you just gifted your spouse $50,000.
Well, they say that, well, that's mine.
An individual account in your own name. And if you ever commingle that, then that determines whether it's marital or non-marital. If, for example, you put $100,000 into an individual account, not in your spouse's name, and then during the marriage you take $50,000 of that and put as a down payment on a house with your wife or spouse and deed the house in both parties' names, that $50,000 has now become half of hers or his.
Now, you mentioned seeing an attorney potentially even before you get married. Do you recommend that?
I do, and I've told many people and friends and acquaintances that the best money you can ever spend or give someone as a wedding gift is 1 hour consultation with them. Because
that might be the last package they expect.
But I do. There's so many things you can learn about your finances and how you can protect yourself during the marriage. Even gifts. If your dad gifts you $10,000 every year and you then put that into a joint account or go buy assets that are titled in joint names, you've gifted half of that to your spouse. You may want to do that, and that's fine. But if there's some reason you don't want to do that, you need to know what your rights are.
Right. And what I always tell families is whatever your financial decision you make, here's the thing is you must understand that you have clarity and direction. See, many families, and this goes to all financial decisions, go into it haphazardly and rose-colored glasses. You just need to add a little dose of reality, which a professional like yourself can add that.
Knowledge is everything.
Now, Stephen, there's a whole nother group that are listening right here, and those are the families that are going through a divorce or about to go through a divorce. Now, what can they do if they're already married to prepare for a divorce?
Well, a lot of times you don't know what's going to happen. You just get served with divorce papers.
Surprise.
Yeah. And so, but basically have your finances in order. There's a lot of people that allow their spouse to do all the bill writing and paying bills and things of that nature, and they have absolutely no clue of what their finances are, what assets they have, what bank accounts they have. They rely on their spouse to take care of those things. And those people are the ones that are most, in bad situations at a time of divorce because they have absolutely no clue. And in those situations, we have to rely on the other side to hopefully produce the correct financial documents in a divorce, and then look at tax returns, because tax returns will then have information like dividends and interest earned and things like that on accounts that they may not have produced. But generally speaking, all it takes in Florida is for one person to say the marriage is over. In other words, it's no way it can be saved, and that one of the parties has lived here for at least 6 months before the date of filing. So whether one side wants a divorce or not, if one wants it, it's going to happen. Now,
if you're just tuning in to What Your Money Would Say, we have Stephen T. Holman, who's a family law attorney, and we're talking about sometimes an ugly word called divorce, but it's in a world where 50% of marriages end in divorce. So we have to be prepared. And he said some very crucial things. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the side that gets left out in the cold sometimes, basically. If you're the spouse that doesn't have anything to do with the finances, you could be that person left out in the cold in a divorce situation. And no one wants to be in that situation. Not always will both sides enjoy the financial side or want to be involved, but you need to understand it to the best level you can. And if not, you need to have a third party, like a financial advisor, that really encourages having both spouses involved. What do you think about that, Stephen?
Absolutely, I agree with that. And there's ways, just because you haven't been involved in your finances, if you have a good financial planner or an attorney that goes through bank records and tax returns, there are ways of finding out what you do have. It's just more expensive, because it's time consuming to do that. But if you know a divorce is pending, do what you can to get your finances in order. Make sure you have bank account numbers. Make sure you have life insurance policies. Know who the agents are. Because if your spouse does not produce that through discovery, you know where to tell your attorney to go look for it.
Speaking of the process, I believe that many families, it's one of the things you've never went through, and no one coaches you how to sadly go through the divorce process. And sometimes it's, as you said, one spouse, They throw it on you, and now you're in the middle of a divorce procedure. So for families that have never investigated it, what does the divorce process actually look like?
Okay. If the person is going to file for divorce and they're going to retain an attorney, they consult with an attorney, they hire an attorney, and the attorney files a petition for dissolution of marriage.
Okay.
The attorney files it, a summons is issued, and then the other party is served.
Yeah. Okay. So that's when they finally find out that
they're getting divorced, and they were served with divorce papers. And then at that point, they have 20 days to file their answer to the petition for dissolution of marriage, their answer or counter petition. So if, for example, the husband files for divorce and he files a petition for dissolution of marriage, the wife gets served. The wife may then file an answer and counter petition, and in her counter petition ask for things that the husband did not plead for, such as spousal support, attorney's fees, and things of that nature.
Now, if they're starting to file for these things, we talked about this just a second ago off the mic, is when you're trying to come to the table saying, well, I want custody rights, but you've never even been involved with that relationship with the child, that could be a problem in the divorce procedure, correct?
Yeah. Generally, you're bound by your conduct during the marriage. In other words, if you were an inactive father and now you're getting divorced and you say you want custody of the children, it's probably not going to happen, absent some very extenuating circumstances, such as the spouse being abusing alcohol and drugs and things of that nature. So the parent that has been the most active during the marriage, before they even thought about divorce, is generally going to be the parent that has, the more role playing, with the children post divorce.
Now, is it kind of a once it's done kind of thing? If we're talking to, they've finally seen the light. They think it's important to finally step up to the plate, become a good father, good mother. Is it too late?
It's never too late. It's never too late to become a good parent. You may not have been a good parent during the marriage because of work or roles y'all determined between the two of you. For example, if the male is going to go out and work 50, 60 hours a week and mom is going to take care of the children and things of that nature, and then you're going to get a divorce, it's my humble opinion that the parent that was inactive because of decisions they jointly made during the marriage as to what roles they were going to play should be given the opportunity, when one side wants a divorce, to become more active, because
Sure.
roles are changing at that point in time.
Sure. And they may have finally woke them up. Said,
Exactly.
Work is pulling from it too much for me. I've, maybe already lost my relationship with my spouse, but I don't want to lose the relationship with my kids.
Absolutely.
Which it's good. You hear some horror stories that doesn't always happen. But right now, if you're just tuning into What Your Money Would Say, we have Stephen T. Holman, who's a family law attorney here in Pensacola. And he was just recapping the divorce process. If you will, recap the process and kind of tell us what goes on after that.
Once the other side is served and they file an answer or counter petition within 20 days, at that point in time, you go through what we call discovery. And both parties have an obligation to produce documents through mandatory disclosure, which is a ton of financial information. Bank accounts for the last 12 months, life insurance policies, stock brokerage accounts, retirement accounts, financial affidavits, tax returns for the last 3 years, and so on and so forth.
And divorces don't always happen around tax time either. So when you have all those documents.
No. And so, but if you don't, then you have to produce 1099s, W-2s if you had not filed a tax return for the prior year as of the date of filing. So both sides have to produce the same thing. Now, it may be that one side is not working and there's really no documents for them to produce. Or you got one side producing bank accounts and the other side, all they're going to do is turn around and produce the same bank accounts. But, everybody has to produce the same financial disclosure.
Okay, so now once they've brought to the table all the finances and it's on the table, then what happens?
Well, you try to get the case settled at that point when you have everything
Try is the
in
key
front
word?
of you. Yeah, and then the court will, require you to go to mediation before you can have a final hearing. And oftentimes in between then, an attorney will ask for a temporary hearing, okay, before mediation and before a final hearing. And
Now, what's the goal at the mediation part before we go to the temporary hearing?
Mediation is an effort to resolve all issues. Mediation is a great process. It is it's going to be required by the court, but you can voluntarily do it on your own. Mediation is the mediator is generally an attorney. The mediator cannot make you settle. The mediation is a process where both sides give the mediator confidential information. It cannot be used against you in court. Whatever you say in mediation or do in mediation cannot be used in court. And that gives everybody an opportunity to disclose all their cards to the mediator and give the mediator some guidance as to hopefully come up with an idea that the attorneys couldn't do to get the parties to meet in the middle.
That's a fantastic. I mean, to get to a neutral boundary and then just kind of lay the cards on the table so that hopefully we can get some good resolution.
Yeah, and they say a successful mediation is usually one where everybody leaves a little mad, and that's because they've given up something. No one's going to hit a home run in mediation. It's going to be where both parties compromise and both parties give up something to meet in the middle to do what's best for them and their children if children are involved.
So now once we've left everyone mad at the mediation, now what's next? You were saying about a temporary hearing?
Well, temporary hearing is usually before mediation, but it doesn't always have to be. Temporary hearings are usually to establish support for one spouse because the other spouse that made the money is not providing enough support for the spouse or providing child support. Or there's temporary hearings for exclusive use and possession of the house and things of that nature. So temporary hearings are designed to keep the parties at status quo and to keep everybody above water until they can get to a final hearing and have the judge decide if they can otherwise settle themselves.
Okay, now once they get to the courtroom and the judge is there, tell us a little bit how that plays out.
Well, it's certainly not like what you see on TV.
Judge Alex, huh?
Right. The judge, both sides, the petitioner gets to go first. The one that filed for divorce is the petitioner, and they present their arguments to the court. And then the other side gives their opening statement, and then they start presenting evidence. Now, I want to point out that mediation that we just talked about, you can settle some of the issues at mediation, and then have a trial on the remaining issues. For example, you may go to mediation and resolve all financial issues, but not resolve issues involving the children, and just go try the case on who's going to be the primary parent for various issues, or what parenting schedule is going to be established, and things of that nature.
So the separation.
Yes, and no case is the same. I hear it so often. Well, I work at the same place as Joe, and he didn't have to pay spousal support, so why did I?
Why you seek legal counsel to help you out. That's why you go see Stephen T. Holman to help you out with that. When you're going to see an attorney, that can be scary to some people. There's a lot of great attorneys and use them on specialties. Does that consultation cost? How much does the process cost? And give us a little bit more of the timeline on how long that whole process that you just described would take.
There is no answer. It can be short if the parties reach an agreement, uncontested divorce, and it can be over within 60 days. Or if it's contested, I've seen them go 2-3 years. When they're, a lot of finances are involved, kids are involved, domestic violence.
Just depends on the complexity.
Every case is different, and what attorneys charge vary. Some attorneys, based on experience, don't charge as much, but I generally feel like you get what you pay for.
Sure. It's about anywhere in life.
In anything.
So there's not really a set fees. It just depends on the complexity of the divorce. And you're pretty upfront. Tell us about that. If someone wants to come see you, tell us about that process.
Well, I generally give a free consultation by phone, a short, brief, black letter law. Let me tell you what the issues are and what you need to do. And then I quote them at that point based on what they've told me about the complexity of their case, what my fees will be.
Okay, so they can have a confidential call, tell you about the situation. They'll get an estimate of how much they think the whole process would be, and then they can choose to move forward or not.
Yeah, but I generally can't tell them what the whole process will be. It may be one that you think is going to be uncontested, and it turns out to be a full-blown battle.
Right.
So what I can do is I just charge them an initial initial retainer, what I think it'll be if it gets resolved quickly. And then from there may be additional retainers, but it all depends on the case.
Okay. Now, if you're just tuning in to What Your Money Would Say, we're talking about divorce. And we have Stephen T. Holman, who is a family law attorney here in Pensacola. And I want to talk about one last thing before we wrap up today, and that's what everyone knows, is prenups. What's the pros and cons of prenups?
Well, the cons, from what the connotation is that they feel like the marriage is doomed from the beginning if they have a prenup. And I don't see it that way. It's being smart about your finances. And, if you're young and your parents aren't wealthy and you don't have anything going in there, then do you need a prenup? Probably not. But if you think you may inherit money during the marriage, or you already have money or established business, a prenup is something to consider because it establishes guidelines and parameters for the parties if they do get divorced. Because, as you stated previously, 50% of all first-time marriages end in divorce. And second and third, there's even greater percentage. So If you have assets, if you have money, or you may be inheriting money, it's good if you're not going to do a prenup, at least consult with an attorney, as we discussed previously, to find out what you should do or not do in the event you were to inherit something during the marriage. But a prenup certainly outlines what the guidelines are going to be if you get divorced, and it certainly saves you cost and attorney's fees if you instead of battling a divorce down the road.
Sure. And when it comes to any kind of type of planning for, estate planning, divorce planning, it's pay me now, pay me later.
Right.
And a lot of times paying later can cost you a lot more.
Exactly.
So if you want to get in contact with Stephen T. Holman about your divorce or about a potential divorce, what's a good number to call you?
435-6909. 435-6909.
Alrighty, Stephen, I appreciate you coming on the show and peeling back the onion so that more and more people can understand what they're getting into when they get married.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
What your money would say. Today's financial landscape can be rough. One of the most important aspects of planning is choosing the right guide to help you navigate the road to retirement. Andrew McNair and the team at SWAN-Capital is dedicated to providing the very best service in the retirement planning industry today. SWAN-Capital is a full-service independent wealth management firm dedicated to providing guaranteed custom income plans that you cannot outlive. Contact Andrew McNair at SWAN-Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. The difference between SWAN-Capital and you retire once. We help people retire every day. You should be enjoying your retirement years, not letting worry keep you up at night. SWAN-Capital. Sleep well at night. Contact Andrew McNair at SWAN-Capital 850-380-9558. That's 850-380-9558. Again, that's 850-380-9558.
The Veteran Benefit Project, founded by Andrew McNair, president of SWAN-Capital, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping veterans and widows of veterans with long-term care expenses by qualifying for the VA's Aid and Attendance Benefit. Learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA towards long-term health care. There is absolutely no fee associated with our assistance to the veteran, the widow of a veteran, their families, or any retirement community. Our goal is to preserve the dignity of the veteran and to reduce the dependency on the Medicaid system. Again, learn how to receive over $24,000 per year from the VA. Contact the Veteran Benefit Project 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. 850-380-5137. Look us up on the web, veteranbenefitproject.com. At the Veteran Benefit Project, we are committed to helping you secure the benefits you deserve.
Retirement expert Andrew McNair. Changing the retirement paradigm. Now back to what your money would say. Brought to you by SWAN-Capital.
Welcome back to What Your Money Would Say. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Stephen T. Holman about divorce. Now, on What Your Money Would Say, we have a great show lined up for you next week. We're going to talk about the retirement nest egg paradigm, and we're going to crush that egg next week. But I hope that you have already RSVP'd for our Social Security Class 101 at UWF, October 8th and October 10th. It's a 2-class, 1 hour apiece class. And the tuition is about $35, so you want to make sure you sign up early so that you can know, do you actually pull Social Security benefits at 62, 66, and 70? And what's the right decision for you? We're also going to talk about how to maximize benefits so you get every dollar you can out of the Social Security Administration. And then lastly, is Social Security even going to be there for me? So don't miss the Social Security's class 101 at UWF. You can sign up at swan-capital.com. That's swan-capital.com. And I look forward to seeing you next week on What Your Money Would Say. Have a good week.